The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
Well, welcome once again to another episode of the Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker in New York, and I'm here with my co-host, Tom Astor, who has a beautiful sunset in his background and is sort of boasting about a gorgeous summer day in England, which, quite frankly, there is no better than a summer day in England. Tom, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very well. Very summery. Yeah, it's all good. Summery, and the cocktail reflects this, I should say.
Does it? What are you drinking?
I am drinking a summer fruit rosé cocktail.
Ooh.
Rosé is something I drink a lot of in the summer, and we've drunk a lot of in the past. I use one of my favorites, which is a Peak Rock rosé. It's simple syrup, strawberries, rosé, vodka, elderflower liqueur, lemon juice, and a little bit of mint to garnish it with.
Wow. So wait a second. This is a proper cocktail.
It's a proper cocktail. It's a grown-up cocktail, and it's really it's also, weirdly, as my girlfriend says, a similar color to my skin.
So many of the cocktails are, in fact, a similar color to your skin, Tom. As in a sort of pink, red, orange, the sort of many hues of a Cosmo.
But if you ever get the thing is, you can drink too much rosé in the summer if it's too hot. You can just keep drinking it, and it's a good way just to put a bit of variety on it. Really, I mean, effectively just make it stronger, which is probably not great.
I'm kind of jealous. We're also going through, the classic New York heat wave summer moment where, only like a week and a half ago it was literally freezing. Sort of, especially up in the Catskills where we are in upstate New York, properly cold. And that now, within a few days, it's been in the 90s, which, if anyone in the UK and what have you, we're closing on 30 degrees Celsius up here. Swelteringly hot, really boiling. So I decided to go with something very, very simple. A Ricky, right? So I'm actually drinking a gin Ricky. Now, it's, one could argue it's not a cocktail, but essentially it is gin, and I've used an old Tom gin. It's called Tomcat Gin by Bar Hill, which is a new gin I've been trying, and it's rather fun. It has the sort of color of a whiskey because they keep it in old oak casks, American oak casks, for about a 4-year period, and then they actually put honey in it, raw honey in the gin. So, which actually offsets the juniper quite nicely and gives it a slight sweetness, which I quite like. And it's something I've been getting into recently as I've been getting into gins in the past year. And then these old Tomcat gins are kind of fun and a little different. And for those of you who are a bit more adventurous with your gins and I'm sort of bored of the London dries, I recommend it highly. But a Ricky is a kind of interesting drink because essentially it is either gin or bourbon or some liqueur with soda water, and then a citrus. That is basically what a Ricky is. So it's very, very, very simple indeed. But it's been around since the 1880s, and it was first brought about by a guy called Colonel Joe Ricky, who in DC, who pretty much liked to dilute his drinks and didn't like too much sugar in his drinks, and eventually asked his bartender to add some lime to his bourbon and club soda. And it became known as the Ricky and became very, very popular. In fact, one of the most popular drinks. And then eventually people started making their own Rickies, and the gin overtook the bourbon as this gin Ricky is what I'm drinking right now. And if you remember in The Great Gatsby, Buchanan in the book actually serves his guests gin Rickies. So it's been around for a very long time, has quite a good provenance, and is very refreshing. And so that's exactly what I'm drinking right now. Cheers, my friend.
Oh, cheers. And they look suitably similar.
They do, don't they? They do. Mine's looking a little pink in this camera light. It's actually more of the sort of orangey color, but it looks pink.
Good chin.
Chin, my friend. So on to a bit of booze news.
Oh, that's good. Mine's really, really good. I tell you, I can't recommend. I'm going to go to you next time. That's one of the better cocktails I've had. Sorry.
So, well, there you go, people. Booze news today. Tom has just had one of the better cocktails he's ever had. He did actually warn me that he had some good booze news, and that's it. Because coming from a man who pretty much is 100% proof himself, knowing that he's now actually had the best cocktail ever, that's news.
No, my booze news is quite different. My booze news is to do with a distillery in Scotland, Grant's Whiskey Distillery, Girvan in Scotland, who have taken a new member of staff on board in the form of a spaniel.
Woof, woof.
Woof, woof. Called Rocco, who is 1 year old, Cocker Spaniel. He lives in the distillery, and his job is to sniff out the quality of the wooden casks at the cooperage. So,
there you go.
He also has the run of the distillery, so he can pick up the scent on anything that needs tending to regarding the whiskey. And he's trained to, if something smells wrong, it gets reported to Grant. You're going to like this. To Grant's associate global brand director, who is called Chris Wolf, with the cover there. I don't think this is an April Fool's either, because it's obviously not April. But what they're saying is it's a natural material. Distilling a whiskey is an organic process. So the job of the distillery is to make sure that everything is perfect as the whiskey ages in the oak cask, and the sense of smell of a dog like Rocco is 40 times stronger than a human. So they specially selected and trained Rocco to pick up the scent of anything that's not quite right as the whiskey matures. They say that mechanical noses are widely used in the winemaking industry, but they wanted to maintain the tradition of the craft skills by using a dog's natural super sense of smell in our quality control process.
It's a fantastic, Tom. I just, if anyone gets any dog hair in their whiskey, then you know why. And let's just hope he hasn't cocked his leg on any of those barrels.
That's exactly what that is the issue. That is the problem. But as long as it's the outside, it's fine. But he lives in a kennel at the distillery, and he's on call night and day. And they have very strict rules about the people working there. So he's had a terrific effect on the kind of the feeling of what's the word? The morale of the people working there. He loves seeing him, but they're not really allowed to. They're not allowed to sort of get involved with him when he's running around, because he's actually doing the proper job.
Quite right too. So once again, a Barker has come to the rescue in the whiskey.
There we go.
Love it. Perfect. How hilarious is that? Well, I'll leave it at that, people. Here you go. Get yourself a sniffer dog. They're far better off sniffing out whiskey than they are drugs in your overnight bag. Right, Tom? Anyway, moving on. We have a wonderful guest today who's going to give us all kinds of tips and bits of advice, because when it comes to dating, I believe Tom needs some help. Our guest today rose to fame after starring in the 21st season of ABC's The Bachelor, has appeared in Dancing with the Stars, is the founder of Natural Habits Essential Oils, and more importantly, has a much more successful podcast than ours, Tom, where he dishes out dating advice and discusses relationships in his show called The Viall Files. Please welcome Nick Viall. Nick, how are you, buddy?
I'm so great. So great to be with you guys.
Thank you. What a pleasure. And what are you drinking, mate?
Well, usually a whiskey on the rocks, but I didn't pour myself a drink.
Usually? I mean,
in the afternoon. It's 2,
It's 2:00. This is called the Shaken and Stirred show. It is not called the I'm not having a drink show and I'm going to have a drink later. What is going on?
I left it in the kitchen. I can go grab it.
Go grab it. Go, Nick. Go on, Nick.
All right, I'll be right back. All right. Give me a moment.
Unbelievable.
I'm not having a drink. I'll be first.
How could we not be drinking? It's 2:00. It's 5:00 somewhere, Nick.
I think I had my first glass of rosé at 4:00 this afternoon.
Which is the reason, by the way, you are beginning to look like a rosé. It's not because of just the simple color. It's because of
too much
consumption. All right, cheers. All right. Yeah, we got the sun coming in this way. We got the light over here.
I was just saying we're all over the world. So Tom is in the UK right now. He's in Oxford. Cheers, by the way. I saw you. I like your glass. Cheers. I'm in New York and you're in Los Angeles. So we are basically all around the world right now. So our motto on the Shaken and Stirred show is that it is, of course, 5:00 somewhere. Now, so regardless, now, look, let's jump right into your life, Nick, a little bit. Before we get to your podcast and your sort of relationships and all of that kind of business, because you talk about that a lot in your own public life. Otherwise, normally I wouldn't get into your relationships.
It's okay.
And the reason we want to talk to you about your podcast is, as Nigel said, it's much more successful than ours. We can do this an awful long time.
We need to figure it out, Tom.
Any tips would be great.
Well, I mean, clearly talking about your relationships, Tom, really helps. But anyway, let's dig into your life, Nick. Where were you born? What was your childhood like? A little bit. Give us a little bit of a background.
I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Midwest, and I'm one of 11 kids.
11. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm the second oldest of 11. So, my parents just kept kind of popping them out. My mom had the youngest when I was 25. I'm 6 months closer in age to my father than I am to my youngest sister. And there's six women, 6 girls, so 5 boys in the family. And I'm the second oldest. So it's a large family.
Was there something wrong with you? Were they trying to hopefully get better and better as they went along?
Probably. I tell myself it was, they hit a home run with me and just kept trying to duplicate it and couldn't get it right again and kept doing it. But you're probably right. I lie to myself all the time. Pretty, Catholic conservative household, and my parents have done a good job. I think some of the older ones have kind of expanded their minds on a more progressive kind of world a little bit. And I think that's kind of the beauty of our family, is that my parents invested so much of their lives into their kids. And, we've really opened up their life to kind of all different sorts of lifestyles and people. I was actually just in Mexico for my cousin's wedding with my parents and my girlfriend. It was my parents' first time in Mexico ever. So that's pretty fun because my parents gave up so much of their life for their children, and so that's a little bit of my child. I had a pretty traditional, played a lot of sports, growing up, and went to college and university, and found my way into this world.
Well, that was the fastest sort of speed through someone's childhood I think I've ever heard. I mean,
we could do a deep dive. I mean,
no, I'm going. I'm headed right there right now. By the way, because I'm just curious because you just mentioned 11 children and then acted as if my parents they're fantastic. And okay, look, I get it. I come from a family of 6 kids.
That's big, yeah.
Which I thought was big. I mean, you've pretty much doubled me right there, right? Meanwhile, I bless my parents' soul. It's very hard with 6 kids. I mean, I've got 2 of my own, and it's pretty tough to keep your eye on them. You telling me that your parents were able to really make every one of you 11 feel extra special or loved or careful? I mean, my parents had no idea if I was there or not there half the time, and I was basically like they would call the names, and the dog's name would come before mine. Put it that way.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually had just got off the phone with my sister, and we were talking a little bit about this. I'm me and her are one of the older ones, and we were pretty blessed to get plenty of attention. I do know my parents were great in the sense that it was such a priority for them. I can't speak for all of my siblings, and if they felt like that attention was received as equally, and as every family has, they have their drama and different of opinions. But my parents truly sacrificed. They made their whole life about their kids, and go into soccer or baseball or football games or whatever. And I don't know how everyone felt, but I do know that my parents made a concerted effort, and I was pretty lucky.
I think we just got a glimpse at the truth there, Tom. I think that actually Nick, in fact, was the squeaky wheel and got all the attention. And he kind of.
I am definitely my mom's favorite. Yeah.
You see, what did I just say? I just told you. I knew it. I nailed it. Mom's fave. And he alluded to the fact I can't speak for my brothers and sisters. I don't know what they felt like. Meanwhile, all was good with the glowing son, the second eldest. Fantastic. By the way, is the eldest the daughter?
Yes.
I knew that as well. You know why? Because your son, and she was happy because she had a boy, and she loved, and she was all crazy about it. Yeah, it's all coming out now. You see, this is it.
Now, that first son and mom's relationship always hard to beat. It's hard to beat.
Fell in love all over again. That's what happened. So now it all comes back to your relationships now. So we flash forward. Okay. Obviously, I don't want to go. I'm not even interested actually in Bachelor Nation, all this stuff. I'm familiar with it. And obviously, there's so many people who've been involved with the franchise. My career has been in reality television, as you probably know. I've been around that part of that world a lot. But I'm curious as well, because having sort of just started with that sort of personal family relationship dynamic, what made you think, okay, I want to go on to sort of in a televised way and talk about relationships or broadcast my life, especially when you talk about coming from a Catholic conservative type background. I'm just curious as to that play. It was
a bit fortuitous. I was, working in software. I sold software for a living, and I quite liked my job. And I'm being from the Midwest. People tend to get married and settle down, in their 20s, and I was dating a girl at the time, and we broke up. And and we had like a group of friends, right? And everyone was dating, and we broke up, and everyone else got married. And I just kind of ended up moving to Chicago, and then my buddy's friend is a big fan of the show, and she decided to sign me up without me knowing. And when I got a call, I was just like, nah, I don't want to, I'm not going to do it. But I was really just curious about the process, and so I went through the casting process more just like, well, I'm not going to do this show, but like, what is this like? Just the experience of going, and I didn't know what it meant to be a producer or a TV show. But throughout the process, I realized, like, I met them, and I was like, I think these people are going to ask me to go on this thing, and so I started telling people at work, and to my surprise, the people I worked with were very supportive in a sense that, like, we like you, but this is a unique opportunity, so go do it, and we'll figure out the rest later. And it wasn't so much about relationships or dating or kind of being just open about it. It was more like, this is such a unique experience. I don't know what it's going to bring, but I think it would be silly to say no to, especially being lucky enough to have people around me kind of supporting it and having me figure it out. And then the rest is kind of history, in the sense that once I was in that environment, I just kind of had this, like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go for it. There's no point in doing something and half-assing it or not embracing the moment. And it's a really bizarre kind of social experiment. And and then so once I was in it, I just kind of, I was a bit of a skeptic. I'm a realist, but I was going to be open to whatever it was. And I just kind of embraced that kind of atmosphere. And that's kind of how it all played out. So it wasn't necessarily planned as much as me trying to just enjoy the experience. Up until that point, I had a pretty boring, fine. It was, Midwest life and worked, and I had my friends, and it was my first kind of exposure to a world outside of the very nice and pleasant kind of Midwest lifestyle.
I mean, it's definitely interesting when you look at sort of just reality television as a genre, whereas people everywhere, all over the world, but certainly all over this country, have a fascination with celebrity and with fame and with access to what that life might be like. And therefore, these shows create every season a whole new slew of names and faces and everything else, and people that go along with it. What do you think? What do you think is the fascination with relationships and the broadcast of them, the sort of that make them the sort of public relationships?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think what it is that it's kind of a universal language of relatability. Especially when it comes to social media and TV, everyone wants to be relatable. Everyone wants to connect with people, and it doesn't matter, man, woman, gay, straight, whoever you are. You want to connect and love, and you want to have relationships of some kind. And so it's pretty nice. And love will really fuck you up. It will really mess you up. It'll make you vulnerable. It'll expose your ego and all these things. And so I think when people see other people share those vulnerabilities, they might be quick to judge, but at the same time, I think it's a comforting feeling because while we might not be honest with ourselves about our experiences, I think we all relate. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Swingers, classic movie.
Sure.
And I kind of call it that the Jon Favreau moment, that when he's, leaving that girl the voicemail over and over, and he just he's having an out of body experience. Like, he knows this is a terrible idea. He knows it's a nightmare, but he can't help himself. And I think, love and relationships can do that to us. And it's a very vulnerable state. And I think it's something everyone can relate to. So I think that's where it comes from.
You mentioned Swingers. Is that still like, what is the modern term for the term swinging? Is it still swinging? Is there something else?
It's still swinging. There's polyamorous now. There, just open relationships. It's like everything else. It's broadening. It's kind of non-traditional. I just call them.
If Nige is interested in it, what is the current word that he needs to put into Google? I think that was the question you're trying to get at.
I think non-traditional is a safe way.
Non-traditional. That could lead to all kinds of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
No. It's not, and not at all what I meant. Was I was much more conservative in my understanding of the word. But I'm curious. I mean, it's one of those things where this is one of the things that I sort of find fascinating. I mean, I've been married now for 22 years. Been with my wife 26 and a half, 27 years. So in a long-term relationship, we met anything, right? Pre-phone, cell phones, even they weren't even around. We were, you'll laugh, but seriously, we didn't have cell phones. That's how long ago that was. And recently, there was certainly no social media. There was nothing like that. There was reality television hadn't happened, right? So this is mid 90s, so really early on, right when pretty much even the internet was starting up, so at a very, very early stage. And when you look at relationships now and you look at things like television shows, like what you have been on, or just dating apps and what have you, and how people meet one another, it's radically changed. So I'm curious, you're in a relationship right now. I know I've seen it all over the press, a beautiful girl, Natalie Joy. How did you guys meet?
The old, very romantic story of her sliding into my DMs and,
her sliding into your DMs.
As they said, she messaged me on Instagram and, shot her shot and went for it. Caught my attention.
So basically it's its own dating app in its own way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people will, say, oh, I don't want to meet on a dating app or sliding in DM. Technology changes the world. And, as you referenced back in your day, and, even I remember a world without cell phones and social media, and I used to pass notes in high school, and that's what it is. Like, it's just a way to, you pass a note, or you send someone a love letter, and I think that's, social media has changed that, where now we're just messaging people on the internet and hopefully they respond and putting ourselves out there that way.
So, I mean, okay, look, you have, let's get straight to it. You have this very successful podcast, Viall Files. And, you give dating advice, you talk about relationships. I mean, I don't know enough about your exact background, but what gives you the sort of, I guess, the soapbox to really give advice in this realm?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. People always say, it's one of those things. I just started being the friend that people would come to for advice. And I say, I don't call myself an expert. I'm very, very, I repeat that regularly because I don't have a doctorate in it. I'm not a therapist. I often refer to people. It's just I don't know the specifics here. And I've thought about that a lot. And I think, I don't give any advice about an experience I've never had my own. Every advice I get is something I either got wrong or experienced at some point in my life. So
when you were talking to me earlier about swinging, then that was because, anyway, we'll go on.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. But or just kind of, I operate on the premise that the greatest liar we'll ever meet in our life is ourselves, right? I just kind of realize that, and like little lies, we tell ourselves our egos, and our egos have a way of tricking us and convincing ourselves we want things, right? And we're so quick to say what we want, but we don't really follow through. And that might be like, oh, I want to get in shape or be healthier while and then 5 minutes later we hit the snack bar or whatever. And so I just gotten really good at kind of spotting the lies, so to speak. And all I really do when people, reach out or tell their stories is I just kind of listen for those kind of disqualifiers. When people say well, I don't really like him, right? Of course you like him, right? Your ego is afraid to hear the truth, and I think we do that a lot. And I think we just have to get better at being honest with ourselves about what we want and what we don't want, what we're afraid to have happen. And the more honest we are with ourselves about our vulnerabilities and what scare us, that can kind of really, you can see the forest through the trees, so to speak. And so that's just something I've been good at. And I just try to position myself to be kind of your best friend or your older brother who you'd go to for advice. And you're welcome to disagree. I never qualify myself as the expert. I'm just the guy who might offer some advice, and you're welcome to take it. And people seem to find it healthy and helpful. And I am proud to say that I often get the occasional therapist week to week who will reach out to me and say I do a good job and validate. But I'm very careful about saying things that I don't know or claim to have context about things I haven't learned. And again, a lot of it just comes down to spotting the lies we tell ourselves.
Amazing. I mean, first of all, you do a better job than us then, because we say all kinds of lies on this show that we have no way of backing up and no proof for. And we act like complete experts when we have no idea what we're talking about.
It's total bollocks. It's absolute bollocks. I've never said anything that I didn't. I've never lied. I've never lied on this show in my life. And also, by the way, Nick, sorry, do you mind if I just quickly interrupt it? Because it's all well and good for Nige to sit there and go, what gives you the soapbox to like be the guy to, you know? I mean, if coming from a judge on a program called America's Next Top Model, when he was basically a freaking clothes horse, I mean, albeit, you know, a successful and very well sought after fashion photographer, we will say, I'll give him a bit of credit for that. But I mean, to be a judge on America's Next Top Model, you know, maybe maybe I don't know if it's more appropriate for me to ask him now. Just flip this one onto him quickly, just so, you know, just so we even it out a bit. I'm just feeling a little bit.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, to be honest, like I watched. My girlfriend was back in the day was a big fan of Next Top Model, and I kind of always had a man crush on Nigel. So
Tell him that.
I don't mean to gas you up and make you feel uncomfortable, but like, you know, good-looking guy, he wears a nice shaved head, always fashionable. I was like, that guy's just cool, you know.
Sorry, Tom. There you go, man crush. We're going straight Polly right here, right now.
It's this kind of, I know we have the swinging thing, and nowadays, isn't there some sort of like podcast Hippocratic oath type thing where you're not allowed to fall in love with your whatever it is, your host or your guest?
When you're both hosts of a podcast, you can. It cancels.
Jesus.
Yeah, you know, it's like you know, we know that we're on the inside.
Yeah, and I actually literally his podcast slid into my podcasts.
That's unfortunate.
Set this up, and actually, this is kind of like a love triangle that's happening right now, right, Tom?
Really, really unfortunate way to say it, but yeah.
Very unfortunate, but it is true. Look, moving on, because there's nothing that qualifies me to be a judge on America's Next Top Model other than the fact that, hey, you know what? It pays to have an English accent, and that's pretty much the only thing that you need to be a judge on any American reality show.
Respectfully, Nigel, I disagree, because what you are good at is having a strong opinion that you're able to convince others is true. And that is the key to a good podcaster.
While he's lying. Whilst lying.
Well, as George Costanza would say, if you believe it, it's not a lie.
Exactly. And I agree with that. I want to know, what makes you happy, Nick? What do you look for in a relationship?
Apart from knives.
Yeah, that and swinging and all that stuff. It sounds corny, but people like say, you know, you want to date someone who, you know, makes you your truest self or whatever. And I don't think anyone can make you anything than who you are. But you know, I'm lucky enough to be in a really great relationship with my girlfriend, Natalie. And you know, I have a lot of bad habits. I have a lot of neurotic behaviors, and I'm in my head. And, I was hanging out with a lot of family this weekend. And when you hang out with your parents and your older uncles as an adult, you see them differently than you saw them as a kid. And you're just like, man, like, that's where I get that bad habit from, or that bad. It's just like, oh man. And, you know, like I have my good days and bad days, but I'm with someone who I feel lucky enough to have. And I find myself comfortable with being who I am and not have her judge me, but also open the possibility that I want to hear her feedback, and I want to do a better job. I truly want to be my best self around her. Right. And which I don't know, like there's a lot of people and I don't give a fuck what you think, like I'm just gonna do me. And with her, it's just like, I got a good thing here. And when she gives me feedback, it comes from a place of love or believing in me and being a cheerleader, as opposed to, I've been in relationships and I've been that person too, where it's a poke in the bear. It's it's a nag, or it comes from a place of criticism. Or I've been in relationships where I'm like, I'm competing with you all the time. You know, you're kind of one-upping each other. And so, yeah, just that combination of feeling like I can just be my weird, neurotic, truest self and still feel her love, while simultaneously being motivated to, really want to like make her happy. Or, we're at the wedding and I know she wanted to dance, and sometimes I want to dance and sometimes I don't, but I'm like, I want to show her a good time. I want her to, have, and it feels good to feel that way. And so a little bit of that.
Are you okay when she dances with somebody else?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not. I talk about a lot of this on my podcast, but obviously, jealousy is a big topic when it comes to relationships, and jealousy just comes from an insecurity, right? So that insecurity could be some sort of trauma you experienced when you were younger, or maybe a past relationship you had kind of messed you up, or maybe it's an insecurity that's present in the relationship. Your partner's doing something that's just like it's like a red flag. You're just like, I'm just really insecure. And so, so far we do a good job of, I feel like, I don't have any questions about her feelings towards me and vice versa. And if I do, I'm not generally an insecure or a jealous person, but I recognize that if I ever feel jealousy, and I'm certainly capable of feeling it, that I just try to figure out what it is that's making me feel jealous. And so, if a guy wants to buy Natalie a drink, great, saves me $8, right? And I'm confident that I still know where she's going, and she's going to walk back to me or whatever. But if I ever felt like, maybe she's more interested in, anything but the drink, I might be upset. So it really comes down to your trust in that person or your confidence in yourself. So
there you go. Wow. And there's buying buying another girl a drink, someone else buying your girl a drink. Yeah, I guess that happens. It doesn't happen.
I'm completely with you on that. Generally in relationships, if you've got I don't know, from my experience, if you've got an issue with a sort of jealousy thing or whatever, jealousy, I think, is one of the most poisonous. I mean, it's one of the most. It's just one of the most toxic emotions. But I find quite often that if you're in a scenario where the relationship isn't going very well, and the other person's actually not that as attentive as you are, it's generally your jealousy is quite often kind of just literally a kind of it's like a what's it called? When the transference, it's like a transference thing to the fact that there's something fundamentally wrong in your relationship anyway. I mean, I feel very much the same way.
Yeah.
About jealousy, I can't stand jealousy. I think it's like and I just don't do it. I just don't do jealousy. And frankly, it's like if I ever felt kind of like, ew, I don't like that, I'd be like, is there a problem? I'd literally confront the situation. I'd head on and go, is there an issue here? If there is, listen, no problem at all. That I don't mind going back home on my own. I mean, I couldn't care less. But what I do mind is what I don't is that jealousy feeling. It's just not. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, if you start a relationship and right off the bat, your partner's super jealous, and you're just like, hey, I like just trying my best. I'm showing up and I'm giving them attention, but yet they're still jealous, and then that person clearly has some insecurities from their past, right? And there's really and that's a huge red flag, because you'll be constantly fighting that battle, and it'll be nothing you can do about it because it's not you. You're not a reason they're insecure, and you can't fix that insecurity. They can only do that, right? And so
if Natalie's listening to your podcast and was hearing your comments about Nigel earlier, she's totally fine with that.
Nice one, Tom. I'd like to know, do people get off on jealousy?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it can be like
a turn on in itself.
It's stimulation, right? Our brain desires stimulation, more than they even like boredom. The brain prefers pain to boredom. It would rather feel something than nothing, even if that something is jealousy or pain or whatever. And yeah, you can use jealousy or people's insecurities to control them, and people often get off on control and power.
Wow. We're going to move on to pain later. But before we get there, I don't know how we get to these subjects, Tom. I don't know how one thing leads to another. But before we know it, Nick's talking about pain. I want to talk about dating, though, before we get any further, because I kind of feel like there must be some great sort of dating stories. One, that you've come across, but two, personally for you. Do you have a worst dating experience?
Yeah, I mean, one that always comes to mind is this was a long time ago in my early 20s, and I was going through a breakup, and we had been broken up for a few months, and it was a breakup that I didn't want to get over, in a sense. I at the time I thought I couldn't get over, and in reality I just didn't want to get over. And I went on a date with a waitress that my sister worked with, and it was I was in a bad state of mind. we had nothing in common, and I had to like drive 45 minutes to pick her up and then drive downtown, and like there was no conversation, and it was just I only like nothing specific or horrible happened. It was just one of those things that like stuck with me because I just wanted to like get over this like sadness, and yet I ended up like jumped through all these hoops to go on this date with this girl that was just kind of weird and awkward, and like just it's like she had never been on a date before, and I was just like, if this is what dating's like, I'm giving up, man. And it just like was one of those moments where, and it always usually happens that way, right? You're trying so hard and you force the issue, and it ends up backfiring and kind of sets you back. And so I kind of remember that. And I just, it's more just, it's all perspective, however you want to see it. And if you want to tell yourself, oh, I'm not going to have a good time, or I can't get over something, and you probably won't, and that was a big learning opportunity for me to just try to change my mindset. So
there you go. Well, that's pretty deep even in itself back at that age. I mean, I can tell you that personally, if I have one I have several bad dating experiences, but I think one, which is probably the funniest one in a nutshell, and people beware what you do. I was on what was meant to be a date with Chrissy, who's my wife now, and it was a girl that I was chasing at the time. She has an identical twin sister called Kimmy, and we were living in Italy, and they were both models, and they decided to go on a safe date with me, and took 4 of their friends with them. So it was me and 6 girls, all models, going for a date in the daytime. We went to have a picnic in the park in Milan. We're sitting there. I'm literally feel like I'm holding court. I was at that point myself, a young man. I was quite well built. I'd taken my shirt off. I was hanging out. We were just sitting in the park, taking in some sun. We were chatting. Everyone was sitting around. We had some wine. We were talking. And by the way, back then I used to have long hair that came down to my shoulders, very Fabio-esque.
sure.
I leant back. And unfortunately, in Milan, they don't really, take care of their animals and what have you in the right way. And I remember I just didn't think much of it. And I was talking to them, and I used to constantly put my hand through my hair. And I put my hand through my hair. And as I did so, these girls' eyes looked, and they were looking at me like horror-stricken with their face. And I went, "What? What?" And I went like this with my hand, and I could smell this rancid dog turd all over my face, all in my hair. And I then went on my body, and I had basically leant back, put my hand into a dog turd and put it throughout my hair, and was covered in shit on my very first date. And looking at this girl who I'd been trying to have a date with, and they had safely done it in front of 6 girls. And luckily there was a fountain not too far with water coming out of it in Italy. We're in Italy, there's fountains freaking everywhere. I ran up to the fountain, I washed my hair, washed my body, and we had to go. There was shit and everything. We had to leave anyway. So Chrissy, very sweetly, was wearing a sheer butterfly crop top in chiffon over her t-shirt. She took it off, and for some godforsaken reason, I thought I'd put it on. So I actually wore it and then walked home in it. Now, that, guys, is possibly the worst date ever as far as disaster. Except for the fact that my wife will tell you that she actually had a soft spot for me after that.
That's what I was about to say. Think about the dynamics. I mean, at first, she didn't trust you enough to go on a date with at least one friend. She needed to bring a whole army for her comfort level.
My reputation went before me. What can I say?
And like, you're this big, bravado, beautiful guy. You used to, and it really, she probably saw you, like before, she just probably saw you as like, oh, he probably thinks he can, do all this or do all that. And it humanized you. And it sounds like what probably won her over is I'm just guessing here, is that you probably handled it in a way that, that made you normal and trusting. And like, people always are like, how are you at your worst, man? And that's how you really can tell, someone is safe to be around. And
basically, what you're saying is that ultimately the fact that I rub shit through my hair actually could be the reason why I'm married to my wife right now, is because I humanize. I never really, I've never really thought of it like I'm getting Nick Viall.
It's how you reacted to rubbing shit in your hair. Not that you did it. It's how you responded to it. And if she saw a guy, she's like, he can rub shit in his hair, and
I'd cry and shriek.
Yeah. And he'll be okay. And he won't, whatever you didn't do or did do, you did it just right to make her feel comfortable around you.
It was a bit when you said "mummy," I would need my mummy. That I think that was the final thing that just broke Camel's back.
Mummy? No, actually, I didn't say mummy. I actually cried for nanny.
Nanny.
Now, if you actually did that, you might have not be married to her today.
Where's nanny?
Yeah.
That's a great story. I had one other embarrassing moment as I was new to a city and just trying to meet people. And I went on like 3 or 4 dates, and I had this quick coffee date, and it just wasn't vibing well. And like a month later, I ended up at a party, and it was low lit and whatever. And I walked up to, I met a group of people, and I introduced myself to a girl I had coffee with on a date like a month earlier. And and it was around other people, and I really embarrassed myself doing that. So that wasn't actually on the date, but as a result of a date. And so I did not feel my best self there.
No, for sure. Well, listen, what is the best date you've ever been on then? What do you recommend as far as like people taking on people on dates? Is there like a sort of a right way to do it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to be comfortable where you can be yourself. And if a date is for the purpose of getting to know someone, it's just me, I like to be in places where I can comfortably have a conversation, right? So it just depends. If you're a conversationalist, you're going to want to you just where you go to a park and talk, If you're someone who struggles with that, maybe you want some sort of activity, people like to go bowl or mini golf because you can do an activity and you can talk about the thing you're doing and then mix it in with things you actually want to learn, right? I don't get why people go to movies or things like that. And sometimes, people put too much pressure on themselves. I find for first dates, like a whole meal, a restaurant, and then there's this appetizer. There's a lot of pressure because you're just sitting there and you're eating, and you have to be worrying about your manners and things like that. And I think it's just all about trying to be as comfortable as you are, and then asking questions. People, I think people are I don't want it to be an interview. It's just well, it's kind of the point. You just ask questions and try to be interested, and hopefully they ask questions back.
It's funny when I again, just you can only reference what you've experienced in life, but is there certain things, say, no-nos on first dates, as far as you recommend for a successful relationship? Like if you actually like the girl, things that you shouldn't do.
Don't talk about yourself that much. Let them ask questions, answer their questions, show an interest in them, ask them questions, and ask follow-up questions. They're well, what do you do for work? They tell you, do you like that? Do you want to keep doing that? What else do you like to do? I think people get nervous and they talk a lot about themselves, right? And it just, you really run the risk of sounding, narcissistic or into yourself or disinterested in them. And most of the time it's just people get nervous, right? And take the pressure off yourself by just simply asking questions, and not necessarily an interview, just show an actual interest, whatever the question is. Hey man, I love your shirt. Where'd you get it? I don't know. Is your favorite color blue? It doesn't really matter.
Or talk about yourself if you think you're fucking great. And if they're not interested, then it's fucking wrong day. You're dating the wrong person, right? I mean, seriously. That's the other.
I feel like if Nigel would have shown up to that date and only talked about himself, he would not be a married man with kids today.
He didn't need to. He was the only guy there with the hair and the
what I should have noticed though is when I first met Chrissy, right? When I literally the very first time I met her, I had kind of been given a heads up that she was there. Her agent had literally acted like a sort of a matchmaker for me. He'd told me that he'd met these beautiful girls in Miami and was bringing them over to Milan, and that I would probably love them. So when I was in Milan, he's like, "Oh, they're coming to the agency. You should come in and meet them." And I came in, and I remember literally seeing Chrissy and was like, "Oh my God, this is the one for me." And true story, that, by the way, that evening I actually called my mother, and this is in 1994, and said, "I've met this girl. I haven't even gone on a date. We haven't done anything. I've just met her, and I'm going to marry her." And my mum thought it was crazy. And so that's true story. But I didn't know what to say when I first saw her. And for some odd reason, the worst pickup line ever, which I now think, having this talk to you, might have been the best pickup line ever, was in fact that I had these horrible mosquito bites on my arm. And I mean, revolting, massive, like allergic, swollen, probably slightly cakey on top because I'd been scratching them and they'd been oozing. And I looked at her and I went, "Hi, how are you doing? How are you doing in Milan and everything?" She's like, "Oh, great." Da, da, da. And I was like, "You got to be careful of the mosquitoes this time of year." And then produced my arm as evidence with these huge bites on it. And this girl looked at my arm and then looked at me and said, "Oh my God, that's fine. I'm from Alabama where, we have mosquitoes that are worse than alligators," and then had some remedy for me and was actually very kind of nurturing and sweet. And I was just the blood draining from my head thinking, oh my God, what have I just done? Showed the ugliest part of my entire body, which is like this gnarly arm of mine. Why would I do that? But clearly these things work with girls.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, who you are, what your strengths are. Like, it sounds like you were I think it sounds like, in watching you on TV and having my man crush on you, I bet people meeting you when you were younger assumed, oh, he thinks he's all this, or he's this tall, good looking guy. And then
we knew wanker.
And then you showed up, you're just like, hey, I'm kind of a nerd who gets bitten by mosquitoes. And I think that allowed her to be comfortable with you. Right. And so like, that's the thing on first dates is like, people are so nervous about being liked, and then they don't act themselves, and guys will like puff out their chest and try to be all macho. Meanwhile,
hang on, Nick. Sorry, hang on. Let's just dissect this just quickly, very quickly, because we're supposed to be talking about you, not Nigel. But anyway, but first thing is to show that these disgusting, this kind of fleshy, wounding arm. The next thing is to rub dog shit in your hair. Really, this isn't about puffing out your chest and chatting the chest out. Like, this is not good. This is not good. And then to top it all, if your first date is about rubbing dog shit in your hair with a surname like Barker, it's not like she's ever going to fricking forget it, is she?
I mean,
Nope.
She married the guy, and clearly she must have been attracted to him. She liked other things about her, but whatever he did made her feel comfortable, want to get to know more. And it was interesting, and it was a story, and he laughed, and she's telling her friends, and it endeared, I don't know, like I wasn't there, but I'm only guessing here, but he's clearly married, and it worked out. And I think it's a great story to tell people, like, if you can be honest and be vulnerable at the risk of not being liked, it usually wins people over.
So on that note then, first kiss, best kiss. What was the best kiss you've had with someone on a first date or on a date situation? Have you had one that's been like, okay, wait a second.
Well,
this is like the kiss.
I remember my first kiss. I was like in the 7th or 8th grade, and her name was Leah. And I remember it was on a street corner, and I was taller, she's shorter. She's standing on the curb, I'm standing on the street, and we I don't know, I just went for it. We probably made out for real, and it probably was really sloppy and ugly, but I remember it being great. And I remember sprinting home with excitement, and I'll never forget. I never ran so fast in my life, just kind of pure energy. As far as best kiss, I mean, yeah, I think sometimes anything like that, I tell you what, the street corner move's a good one. If you're a tall guy, and you are trying to wait for that moment, and you guys are crossing a street, and you step down on the street and you turn around and you're face to face, and maybe there's a nice moment there. I know anytime you like.
Wait a second, you had that. That was planned. That was a whole planned thing. That was my
first kiss. I try to utilize that.
And then turning around. That's like when someone walks by and you put your gaze on where they're going to be, and then they walk through it. That's like that same thing.
Exactly, right? I don't know. I think anytime as a guy, I don't know about what you guys think, but it's always that weird. You're really nervous. You want to kiss her. You don't want to be weird or awkward, and you're just trying to find that real balance of putting yourself in a position where, I don't know. And anytime that goes right, I think you feel pretty good.
I just try and share spaghetti and hope that we both get the same strand and go.
Lady and the Tramp's a great a great plan. I've never actually had that. I feel like I would do a really bad job of that. I get spaghetti all over myself, or
that's basically my problem. I would have be on one end, and I would probably be sucked and put my face plant right into
making weird noises with food, and she would tell me she has celiacs and can't eat gluten or something.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I remember actually, this is a true story then on this one. First kiss with Chrissy in a bar with 3 girls. I like this is a theme, by the way. I wanted to do a tequila body shot. Have you ever done those before?
Yeah, a long time ago.
You wet the neck with lime or with spit or whatever, and then you put some salt on your neck, you put the lime in your mouth, you have a tequila shot. And I said to her, do you want to do a tequila body shot? In which she said no. And I was like, oh. And then I kind of looked, and this other girl who was there, this other model, the tall girl called Celia, turned around and said, I'll do one with you. And I was like, okay, because and everyone was watching, and everyone knew that I liked Chrissy, but this girl said, I'll do one with you. So she licked my neck, did the shot, took the tequila lime out of my mouth, and your lips touch. And then Chrissy immediately reacted. This is when jealousy does play a good part. And went, I'll do one. And so she put the lime in her mouth. We did the tequila body shot. And when I went to take the lime out of her mouth, she sucked it into her mouth, and I had to go digging with my tongue to get it out of her mouth. And that was our first kiss.
That's a great moment. Yeah.
Jealousy can work, people, is the moral of the story.
It
you have to know when to use it.
And dog shit.
Oh my God. What are the warning signs of a bad date, in your opinion?
Like awkward pauses, I mean, real, like if you're just struggling to talk, I don't know, like and that's okay. Bad dates are going to happen. You're going to have more bad dates than good ones. I think everyone's just like, oh, I hate dating. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is this idea that dating's not their end game. Finding your person or whatever you want to call it, your girl, your one and only, like that's your goal. And so like to do that, like dating is kind of like shopping around, and you meet people, you get to know someone, and if you have nothing to talk about and you don't really have any interests, I think that's a good sign of not maybe trying again. Good. I think it's never wrong to like go on a second date to make sure, because a lot of times on a first date, you're nervous and you don't know what to say, but you do have to be able to be yourself around someone. So either they're not your person and there's just not a good connection, or maybe you're just not in a position to date successfully because you're too concerned about being liked. And that's what people do all the time. They don't like, the people go on dates hoping they get liked, which is normal, right? You want to be liked, but like they don't focus enough about like, do I even like this person? I don't even know them. I think they're attractive or they're good looking, but like, do we have anything in common? Like, do I have fun with them? And I think if you just focus on trying to get to know someone, it goes a lot easier, because then you're talking. But if no one's talking, how do you might have an awkward makeout, but I don't know.
Okay, I have a segue here, which is, Tom loves a good segue. Massage. Massage. I'm just going to say it, Tom. I know he doesn't like English. He doesn't like anyone touching him. Basically, it's sort of, it's very hard in England to go on any kind of date and actually get intimate, because the concept of touching someone just freaks people out. Look, Nick's face. He's frowning his brow. He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm talking about massage. You have a natural habits essential oils business. What the hell? Where did that come from? Is that because it's all about you're like, okay, I'm going to get into this?
No, I mean, essential oils are out in the background. It's aromatherapy. It has nothing to do with massage oils. In fact, they would be terrible for massage oils. They have a high absorption rate, so it would just go right into your skin. It's just my sister's a holistic nutritionist, and she's a partner of mine. And it's just kind of a non-invasive type of therapy, so it has medicinal benefits. Something for me, like I struggle with anxiety, and there are some essential oils like lavender, for example, just has calming effects on the body. And if nothing else, just focusing on your breathing and aromatherapy just helps you be more present, right? And a lot of times my struggle with anxiety is me, dwelling on the past or being anxious about the future. And if I just kind of allow myself to be present, that usually helps. And essential oils are a great kind of non-invasive way to do that. All the things like peppermint oil can help with like headaches, for example. So instead of like popping, I add ibuprofens that are really hard on your stomach. Lots of times it can help with headaches and things like that. And so it's just a non-invasive way to kind of dealing with kind of other things like candles. I mean, hey, everyone loves a good candle, but when you burn candles, you're burning carcinogens into the atmosphere and the air, and it's not particularly great to breathe. Or like Febreze or air fresheners, all those things have chemicals in it. And people often will use essential oils like I do to just make your home smell nice with more organic and clean plants.
Have you heard of the? We were talking to someone the other day on this program, and they brought up anxiety. We're having a really, really good chat about anxiety, and someone said something really simple. And I don't suffer from anxiety. Nigel does. I haven't had it, but I heard something that made a huge amount of sense, and maybe it made sense to me because I haven't suffered from it. So, but someone said if you can feel yourself getting when you're anxious, whether it's panic attack or becoming anxious, if you feel that coming on and you feel your anxiety coming onto you, if you replace the anxiety with, and you tell yourself, hang on a minute, I'm feeling anxious, but I'm not. And if you literally say to yourself, I'm not feeling anxious, I'm excited. Have you heard of this? Have you? Apparently, it's the most phenomenal. Apparently, if you can literally, when you start to feel anxious, if you can say, no, hang on a minute, I'm not anxious, I'm excited. Okay, now what am I excited?
I haven't heard that. I'll try that though.
So that's my go-to. So how I've coped all these years is and it's the opposite. I learned it from an actor years ago who had stage fright, and he said that he would go on sport and be like horror, and then so forget his lines, and then he managed to somehow turn it and was like, get on there and be like, I'm so excited to be here, and it just reversed. It became the fear, became the excitement, and I to this day you'll get the welling up for almost like a tightening of the neck, but it's like I'm about to go on a roller coaster, not to die, but to be like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so it was you change that moment, and it's a switch, and it's very funny how that is right on the same thing. It's basically a tipping point of I'm terrified, I'm anxious. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm thrilled. And so
I'll try that out. I think that's great. I mean, it's definitely a mindset. I definitely believe the power of the mind. And I think sometimes have a way of convincing ourselves. I think especially we live in a time and an age of we're identifying all these things, all these new terms are out there and anxiety. And it's great that people are aware that mental health, for example, is a real problem and focusing on mental health. But we have to also recognize that we do, have power to, recognize that you have the mental health struggle and then refocus your thoughts. Like for me, my a lot of my anxiety comes from just like ruminating and like obsessing over the same fears or things over and over. And it's something like I've been working on where I like you, I recognize that I have these, and I recognize what I'm doing. It's just like, okay, I've thought about this once. Okay, I've acknowledged the thing I'm worried about. Okay, great. I've thought about it. Now me thinking about it 10 more times isn't going to do anything about it. And so I'm going to actively say to myself, stop, change my thought. Think about what I'm going to do. What else am I looking forward to? And before that, I would just be like, oh, I can't help it. I'm anxious. And I just kind of told myself I couldn't do anything about it. And I think when we, telling yourself you're happy, faking it till you make it, convincing, rechanneling that energy into something else, I think is great. And just believing we have the power to do things, like people like, I can't get over it. I once told my dad I was going through a heartbreak. My first girlfriend, we broke up like, I don't know how many, 6 or 7 times. And, I've met her when I was 18. My dad was just like, fine. I was like, hey man, you're just going to have to get over it. And my mom was always like the one who was like, I don't know, like, you just love her and it's so romantic. And I literally told my dad, is like, I have a better chance. And I said, I meant it. I meant every word when I said it to him. And I said, I have a better chance of levitating and floating across this floor than I do of getting over this, and I kind of romanticized about it. And I just convinced myself I wasn't going to get over it. And I wasn't, because I refused to believe it. And I think once we just like try to tell ourselves and rechannel energy is we can get a lot done. And so it's a great story, Tom and Nigel. I'll definitely try convincing myself I'm excited and happy. And I think that'll help.
There you go. I mean, give it a go. I mean, ultimately that same feeling you get when you're about to go on a date with a girl that you really like, and you're like, so like, excited, but at the same time it's anxious. So that's that point. That's the reason why I was able to channel it mentally, because I remember being like, oh God, I don't want to do something wrong. I want to say the wrong thing. But at the same time being like, oh my God, this girl likes me and I'm going to go on a date with her. I'm so attracted to her. So it's like, wait a second, what am I feeling? That or that? Yeah. But they both feel the same. So it's kind of like I'm going that way.
When you're feeling that anxious anyway on a first date, and then you meet the woman you're going to marry, and you put dog shit in your hair, it's a lifelong journey.
A lifelong journey. I'm going to come out with a line of dog shit. Listen, Nick, before we let you go, we have something on Shaken and Stirred called Last Orders, which is a quick rapid fire moment. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Very simple. The first one, easy one to ease you in. Bachelor or bachelorette?
Bachelorette. It's just of a viewer, I like watching a bunch of men acting a fools fighting over a woman.
Most romantic date?
I once had a date in Venice, Italy. It was on the show. It was quite a romantic, fun. If you can have a date in Venice, Italy, walking around the city, I highly recommend it.
Before it goes under. In the movie of your life, who would you have play you?
Sometimes I get told I look like Ryan Reynolds. I do enjoy a sense of humor, and he's certainly a better looking guy than me. So I'd be lucky if he would, take up the mantle. No,
I pegged it. I have that written down, Ryan Reynolds for you. So I win on that one. What floats your boat and what gets your goat?
What gets my goat? I don't like liars and hypocrites, and I really hate it when people lie about being on their way when they're still at home getting ready.
Said with a man from experience. And what gets you? And what floats your boat?
I mean, it sounds corny, but honesty. Like, I find it really charming when people can kind of like, shitting your hair. When people can just say,
I did not shit in my hair. Let's just get back. I got shit in my hair. It's a slightly. By the way,
I think it's really charming. It's really charming when someone can point out things that make them insecure or nervous, and people kind of give you access into their who they are, their souls, if you want to and I it always makes me feel closer to people when they say, this is what scares me. This is what I worry about. This is a flaw I have. And I connect far faster with those people than people who are quick to, brag or point out all their things
or judge.
Yeah.
Or judge.
I love a good critic. That's different,
Thank you, Nick. And final question, shaken or stirred?
Shaken.
There we have it, people. Nick Viall, shaken and not shitted. Thank you so much. Please check out the Viall Files and pretty much anywhere you can get a good podcast. And if you'd like Nick's advice on this show, trust me, it only gets better. So get your questions ready and ask away and ask Nick. I think you do Ask Nick. What is that, every Monday or Tuesday or something?
Every Monday, yeah. People are pretty vulnerable and gracious with their stories, and we get a wide variety, anywhere from polyamorous relationships to your typical he just cheated on me, or I don't know how to get him to like me story. And we all learn a lot about relationships and ourselves, and it's a lot of fun.
The man tells it like it is. Thank you so much for joining us on Shaken and Stirred. We really, really appreciate it. What a lot of fun, what a lot of insight. And two old guys like us know nothing about dating, so it's rather fun just to get back into it and talk about it and reminisce. You brought out a few good stories out of me yourself, so how about that?
That was a lot of fun. It was a real pleasure, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me.
All the best. Cheers, my friend.
All right, cheers.
Take
care, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
See ya.